So the fact that I see it, does that mean that we're live streaming?
And we are live now.
And we are live now. Well, I am going to call to order the Finance and Budget Committee meeting for the Children's Services Council. It is 5:11, and Jacinta, if you would be so kind as to call the roll for us.
Commissioner Cummings. Here. Mr. Hannah.
Here.
Dr. Glenn. Here. Mr. Mitchell.
Here.
We have quorum.
Thank you so much. The first item is an approval of the agenda and
Make a motion. I move approval.
thank you. A motion by Dr. Glenn and a second by Commissioner Cummings. Without objection, show the approval of the agenda. General public comment. Ms. Bayer, there any members of the public who would like to speak?
Yes, we have a general public comment, Mr. Neil Skeen.
Mr. Skeen.
I was afraid I'd have to sit in line.
It's like the new logo on the podium. I think that's impressive. Yeah, it looks
I was
nice.
afraid it would say
Yeah.
the guinea pig of the day. You can see I brought my nickels. It's that time of year again. But I thought before I talk a little about that, I don't want to get behind like I did last year and y'all all surprised me with that vote on the 3/8 mill, which I thought was going to disappear. And so I had to vow then not to be unprepared again. I did think I'd comment on a couple of things about the budget that were holdovers from the council meeting last time. And if I do something that you've already resolved, you can stop me and I'll jump on. Even if you think there is merit in delaying a second position of the two program positions that are in line, I think you should just budget it with a deferred date and not try to come back, as Mr. Mitchell had suggested, at least at one point, with a second approval for a second person if it's needed. I agree with a couple of speakers who were last time who thought that was over controlling. I would never do that to a department that worked for me. I think managers need to plan. Control isn't everything. And I think y'all can better focus on things that will have a longer long-term difference. If you do consider doing that, if you do that with a deferred hire for the second one, consider giving SECA the flexibility to hire in the first round if you get a sufficiently compelling second candidate. I think the leverage and the return on that effort will be worth a little extra money. I think last time a lot of people felt you will need the extra position. You will grow into it, I hope sooner rather than later. The return on investment may end up being better designed programs and a more robust oversight and management of those programs. You don't go looking for the cheapest surgeon. You don't try to do it as cheap as you possibly can. I went looking for a lobbyist and was actually indirectly a client of Southern Group, and they weren't the cheapest. I even sometimes thought it was an extravagant. But when I walked through the Capitol with my Southern Group lobbyist and saw the greeting and the knowledge and the contacts that they had, I knew we had the right one. And I think that's true with any professional that we want to have. These are folks going to be out in the community. They're going to be relating to providers. You want them to have of them the same impression I had of my lobbyist and I have of other professionals I've worked with, that these are people who are on top of this. They are out for the good of the community. They're out for the good of all of us as providers and for the children of the county. I think it's also what you want the voters to see. They want to see that this is a professional, high-performing organization that is getting things done for kids. That brings me to my second point, which has to do with my nickels, because it is approaching a critical moment for the council. And I think that I think the council saw last time that there is some work to do to establish or to reestablish or to increase its credibility and standing with the community and with the voters who by 2/3 vote supported this council and invested their tax dollars for 10 years in the work of this council. I couldn't help thinking this, and I'm sorry if it becomes personal, but if it were your own child or your own grandchild, you wouldn't think about giving a 3/4 commitment for now until you sort of decide that they're worth a larger amount. I think that we have to treat the children of this county as if they are our own children, same kind of urgency, same kind of needs, and often a very different level of advantages that our kids have had for most of us in this room. I just think it would be a breach of faith not to prepare a budget that uses the full authority of this council to tax at the $500,000 level and to build a budget that is deliberate, is forward thinking, and shows your confidence that you can manage and make full return on investment of the kind of money that taxpayers have committed to the council. So as you think about the budget, it's the first step toward also the millage. I always try to say here, because it's really true, I admire the work all of you have done individually and collectively, and I want to continue to give it my 100% commitment. I don't want to give it a 75% commitment, and I mean that in my presence and in my support, as well as my funds. So thank you. Best of luck in doing this budget.
Thank you, Mr. Skeen, very much. Ms. Clay, any other members of the public wishing to speak?
No more public comment at this time.
Thank you very much. That brings us to item 5, which is the staffing allocation. And first of all, let me give a special shout out to Dina, who did a great job of taking the comments and the sentiment that I think was expressed by the full council at our last meeting on March 23rd, but also in a meeting that the two of us had, trying to get a budget as it relates to staffing allocation in a place where we can discuss it and move the lever one way or another, but at least it's a good starting point. Just to give you all a little bit of a background on what's before you, we created essentially 3 buckets. The first 2 buckets you're very familiar with already. One of those buckets is the existing FTE that have been approved. And it's funny, Mr. Skeen mentions as a manager, he wouldn't tell his employees, how to do it, but the legislature approves FTEs, and that's kind of the role we're playing here, is deciding what sort of FTE number of full-time equivalent positions that come with salaries and benefits do we want to approve. The nice thing is, unlike the legislature that only meets once a year, we as a council can adjust that whenever and however we want. But think of the first bucket as the 4+1 that was approved at the last board meeting of full-time equivalents, full-time employees of the Children's Services Council that come with it, retirement benefits as well as healthcare benefits and their salary. In the second bucket, think of those contracted positions that fall outside of what Ms. Green was asking for of the council to consider. And that would be our accounting services, our legal services, as well as funds that were set aside for a grant writer, a contracted position. And I don't think, in fairness to Ms. Green, that we should consider those in her bucket of requests, because that's not what she asked for at the last meeting. Those are things that we sort of have to do. Well, at least the accounting services as well as the legal services. The council made the decision to put into our existing budget $50,000 for a contracted grant writer. So I put that in the same bucket. So we have two buckets so far. The third bucket is really what we're here for. And that bucket is was created by Ms. Snyder and I, sort of in the spirit of what the superintendent offered in his comments at the March 23rd meeting. And that bucket is I would call it a flexibility bucket.
Where's the buckets? Can you like point to the bucket?
I don't know that I can point to the way that it's gone out here, but I saw it on one thing. So here we go.
This is the current bucket.
FTE with benefits. This is the contracted services this is the third bucket.
Okay.
And this is the second bucket.
Okay.
Okay, so what is listed as bucket 2 in order is really the bucket 3 that I'm referring to. And where kind of all eyes should focus. What the superintendent suggested, and I think was it was the nature of my motion, but it was definitely the sentiment of the council, as well as some of the public comments, and certainly consistent with Mr. Skeen's comments, is that we set aside as a certain amount of money that the executive director it isn't built into the budget. And in this case, it is based on the 3, pardon me, she asked for 3, we granted her 1 already. It's based on the 2 additional positions. And instead of setting them as FTE that come with the salary, the benefits, both health and retirement benefits, we gave her a lump sum of money. This is very similar to state, and I would assume county positions, where you authorize a set number of FTE, and then you have other personnel services, or OPS is what it's known in state government. And those are contracted services. Again, I remind you that the difference between the state and the Children's Services Council is if my hope is that SECA will hire from a strong applicant pool the person that we approved at the last board meeting. What I shared with Dina is, again, consistent, Mr. Skeen, with some of your comments, and that is from that applicant pool, see if there's a second person who's kind of like a toss-up, and say to them, we would like to contract with you for your services. And there may be someone out there whose spouse already gets benefits, and this is an attractive position. So we've put into this third bucket the position for a contracted what do they call it? Program and quality assurance specialist, a lump sum of $55,000, a special projects manager. If we're putting a person's name on it, that's the position that Holly is currently serving in. And based on my questions and comments back from Dina, because I thought, are we really trying to? I took sort of the Holly position and then Sika, my question to you, which was, okay, we're about to approve position 1. What would you go if the second position was approved? And you said, well, it depends. If I get to keep the contracted services of Holly at 60,000, then I would go, well, your first answer was I want the public outreach, unless I get to keep the Holly position. So the bucket 2 that I brought forward is, again, you can move up and you can move down. is the Holly position staying exactly as it is at $60,000. And it's my understanding Holly would like to stay on as a contracted employee. Up to $55,000 for a quality assurance person. And then kind of something to play around with, even though the functions that were a priority to Ms. Green are going to be saved in the Holly position, an additional outreach position, and we set it at $2,000 a month or $24,000 a year. And that is bucket number 3, and that's where it sits. The reason I wanted it to start with something is it gives us a launching off point where we can talk about it. It is. I did a quick bit of research. I talked to the Department of Education and I talked to the Early Learning Coalition about what a comparable position at both of them make. The Department of Education came back with 9 gazillion different answers, which I guess I wasn't surprised. But the Early Learning Coalition was very specific, and it's very consistent with what we are doing. Remarkably, they have 252 programs that they monitor over 7 counties, geographic counties, and they have 2 quality assurance people. They start at $39,000 a year. So our $55,000 a year starting point, I think, is an attractive salary. And I hope that we attract the best from the Early Coalition or its like to come take the full-time equivalent position. And that, again, from that applicant pool, we find someone who is in a position that they can take a contracting position. In the event that they can't, not a problem. Two things could happen for Ms. Green. One, she's got the full bucket. So she has the additional $24,000 for the community outreach person that may or may not be necessary, but she's got those $24,000 in her budget. And in the event that that isn't enough, unlike the way the Florida legislature works, she can come back immediately. She doesn't have to wait until next session to ask for an additional FTE. She can come back and she can say, here's what's happened. We brought, Joe on in position 1 that was approved on May 23rd. We're rocking and rolling. We found Mary, who was kind of number 2, and that it was working out great. We sort of held off on the outreach position because Holly has been able to do more of that as the other 2 contract or 1 contract, 1 full-time position have been able to do more. And that seemed to be rolling along rather nicely. Now, slightly things that have changed slightly, and I'm making this up, but Mary, our contracted person, is now interested in a full-time equivalent. And here is justification. This is all the work that Mary's done. This is the demands that have been put on her time. And it gives us and my $24,000, mad money isn't going to be enough. And we still need additional community outreach. There are loads of different scenarios that could play out. I would just suggest that the beginning point is, again, what I offered, which I thought was, it's basically what Ms. Green asked for, minus the benefits that go with it, and we're consistent with some of the comments of the other board members. And I see you've got your 10. I'll talk to 10.
Yeah, thank you. All right. So thank you so very much for the work that you and Dina did on this proposal. And I like the various positions that are here. The only issue I guess that I have is I thought the proposal was that we were supposed to come back with a percentage of the budget. And based on the percentage of the budget, we allocate that to Ms. Green so that she could do what she needs to do appropriately, which I prefer. I mean, I have no idea how she would slice and dice this, and I like how you laid it out, but I don't know for a fact that this is exactly what's gonna work for her. I would love to give her the flexibility to say, if I'm gonna manage this program, this is what I need. And the reason why I say that all is because I have my house, you have your house. How we manage in our houses are different, but I want to be able to say, no, we're gonna eat dinner at 6. Y'all may eat at 7, however it is that you want to do it.
And I'm sorry if I didn't make that clear. This is how we got to the number of 60,000 plus 55,000 plus 24,000. That $139,000 is hers to spend however she wants to. It isn't, I just wanted you to understand the rationale that went behind it based on what Sika's request was at the meeting. This is not, she doesn't have to use the $60,000. If Holly decides to, say, God, I'd like to trim my time back, however she wants to
She
do
can
it.
slice and dice it.
However she wants to do it.
So what percentage of the total budget is this?
I guess it would depend on what you consider the total budget. The total budget that is allocated annually, which is, is a different number than the total budget that we have in the bank account.
Okay, so in my mind, and I apologize, I see you. In my mind, we should be deciding on a budget for the total annual amount that will be coming in, correct? All right. So I did a little bit of research too, just a little bit, and looking at some of the other CSCs, they were like a little under 20% of their total budget being spent on overhead costs, staffing, contracting services, and things like that. So that's what I would like to suggest, that we look at what that percentage would be if we were to calculate 20% of the total budget and put that on paper and see exactly what that amount would be, and then say to Ms. Green, here's your budget. You can contract with 3 special project managers if that's what you need to get the job done, or however you want to do it. But I thought we were going to come to an agreement on a percentage.
So what the superintendent's comments were either a percentage or a lump sum. I think it's a percentage is sort of a funny, because your 20% rule, it's not really. So if we were to set a percentage, and the reason I don't think it's a good idea to set a percentage is when you look at our total budget, because we're new, because there were a lot of demands, it's going to make that administrative cost, the true administrative cost. If we were running, no matter what happened, we never funded a program, but we had the salaries, we had our overhead, that number, it's going to make it look higher. And I don't think it's fair. That's why I thought if we come up with a flat number and let the percentages fall where they might. Sometimes, listen, I hope that
But that's what we agreed on. That's what we voted on.
No, it wasn't. It was my motion. We were coming back with either a lump sum of money or a percentage. We were coming back with a recommendation. We were coming back to let this group make a recommendation. It was not on a percentage at all.
Okay, so maybe I misunderstood the motion. I remember that we were going to approve the program services person, the quality person, and that we were going to come back with a percentage. And then we would decide that she can do what she wanted to do with that percentage. That was my understanding.
Yeah, and Dr. Klein, it was certainly the issue of a percentage was raised. I made the motion. At no point did I say, we're going to come back with a percentage, because I don't think that's at one. I think that chasing a percentage is not as good and as clear of an idea as setting a dollar amount, saying, by the way, those dollar amounts are based on
Percentage.
but they're not specific. This is specific. We are giving her a budget in which to work, period. we don't know what if we were to say it's 17%, okay? Well, if the millage rate, if suddenly property values go down, it will make her administrative costs look like it's
still
more.
17%. So her total amount of dollars goes down if the total amount of money goes down, right? So her dollar amount at 17%
So if I say to you, if I'm giving you an annual budget,
Mhm.
and I give you an annual budget that is a set number, that's how people like when the county commission allocates funds, when the school board allocates funds, it's a set, when the taxpayers allocate funds, it's a set number. We have a set number to work from.
So the reason why I like percentage, and I apologize, I do want you to get to the other council members. The reason why I like a percentage is because if we do change the millage rate and our rate does go up and we have more funds to do more programs, that will give her more budget to be able to allocate appropriate staff to manage whatever it is. If we decide not in the millage rate, the millage goes down, we have less dollars come in, we're doing less programs, she would have less staff needed to manage it appropriately. So and it was my understanding when we left is that we were going to decide, we think this is a reasonable percentage wherever we land on the amount of dollars that are coming in. And that's what she has to play with to be able to manage the staff to do what we want done with the program.
So let me ask you this, Dr. Glenn, is it your thought that it's a percentage only for personnel services or for the entire budget?
It's a percentage of the entire budget.
I'm sorry, let me ask the question differently. We have an entire budget. Okay, so this year it's $7 million something thousand, right? That's the number.
Correct.
Is the percentage that you thought we were coming here today to deliberate on, a percentage of that for only personnel services or the entire budget? So for example, in addition to when you, that's why I said your research or your quick research of going to CSCs, that 20% is not for personnel services. That's administrative cost.
Administrative services. Which is going to include legal services. It's going to include Mr. Grayson's services. It's going to include all of that. And so she's going to have to factor in those costs and cover her personnel.
So this, I know we specifically talked about at the board meeting. The question came up of legal services, accounting services, and specifically because it was Ms. McFadden's idea of the importance of a grants manager not being talked about, which is why when Ms. Snyder and I sat down and created 3 buckets, I said, it's unfair to put those in her bucket. So, so I know well, 2 things. One, I'm not prepared to help you with the percentage today because that was specifically put aside. Like we weren't going to be.
Okay, I guess I need to remember what the motion was because, and I would love to, Mr. Hannah,
Right.
I thought you kind of brought up the percentage. So
Let me jump in with a couple of thoughts. All of us are on this committee have been in leadership positions, currently in leadership positions, and we've probably had different opinions about how best to approach some of these issues. Okay, and then we talk through it and come to a consensus. I, from the beginning, probably would have used a money model and would have been based on percentages. When the United Way used to go around and vet groups, one of the big questions was what percent goes directly to programs and what percent is administrative salaries, overhead, fixed costs, right? When you hear commercials on TV, 90% of our money goes directly back into bubble. Now it may be a bunch of crap, but they have it tied back to a percentage. Whatever the dollar amount is, we can back into the math about what the percentage is. So if we took as an example, $7.6 million, that's what we're generating as a budget. And we add up the existing salaries of what's being proposed by Mr. Mitchell, it's 12.3%. When you add additionally the cost of this building and utilities, and it goes to now $1,076,000, which is now 14.1%. Now, the only thing I don't have included in there is the contract. In my mind, the contract, I don't really count the need assessment because it's a one-time thing. But what's not a one-time thing is the contract we just approved for the company that's going to help.
Auditing.
No, the auditing's in there. The company that's going to help groups that can't fill out the paper.
Capacity building.
Capacity building.
Yeah.
That also would be included in that amount. When Paul talks a lot about FTEs, he's right. I give Carmen Connor, Principal Connor, FTE. The reason I do that is that she's held harmless for people with varying salary ranges, so that she didn't go out and fire all the old teachers and hire a bunch of cheap new teachers, so that she's held harmless. That's why it's an average salary that we base those FTEs on. With an organization this small, really, I probably would have started here and figured out, okay, money-wise, what budget do we want to give her and let her go? One of the things that smacks me in the face and jumps out, and Sika, please don't take this is the retirement contribution difference between regular class and senior management. We have strict rules on who qualifies for senior management. 4 of the 5 employees in our organization are looked now to be paid 31% of their salary into FRS, Florida Retirement System. There is not a person in my organization that we do that for. None, no one. Those benefits in and of itself to me are inflated significantly. But those, when you have a money model, are things that the director would have to consider in the hiring process. Do they need health insurance? Are we going to pay 31% back into their retirement, or are they going to be paid 11 or 12%? And then let her operate within those confines. We now have the positions, and I think what you've done is good by kind of creating both. We have the 5 positions, then the 5 positions plus the contracts with Holly, the auditor, the attorney, and a potential contract that's in the budget for grant writing. And then we give her, I guess, you give her another 150 something thousand for other things. And then she has to consider benefits, with including retirement.
What's that devotion?
Wait, just hold that a second. I know it's hard to be the chair of when you're normally the chair and not but I am the chair, just today.
Sure.
So let me speak to this. First of all, Sika, let me jump in. In terms of the senior management position, it was an error that all the positions have it. Only one has it, and that was and that's Sika's position. And let me explain why. I made the motion at the meeting we hired Sika and asked. I don't think anyone understood. Certainly Sika didn't understand until afterwards how much she was getting. $45,000 a year is contributed to her retirement. $45,000 a year. When you all voted on that 3% increase and I voted no, the reason is I looked at the actual numbers. That's a lot of money. By the way, I think she's worth it. And I am comfortable with that. I was not comfortable with others. The problem was if we put it in and it's not supposed to be here. So know that those are being taken out except for except for Sika, and that is because that's how we hired her. And that was my motion. As it relates to and I think that's an important thing because it is a big deal. If it's lost on anybody's in this room, shame on you. That is a huge deal that very few people in government get. And I explained it to Sika right after the meeting where she said, "Oh, I'm going to earn the extra $5,000." I'm like, You just don't know what I just gave to you. But I know that she does now. So
What's the difference between a 31% contribution FRS and a 12%
Yeah.
contribution?
yeah, it's a big, yeah. So, but again,
But I saw it, I'm sorry.
Yes, sir.
But I saw it, I'm looking at this for 4 out of the 5.
I know. That was a mistake. And by the way, Sika and I talked about this beforehand. We caught the mistake. Candidly, good for you all for having done, like, actually, I was like, we'll fix it at the final board meeting. Let's not even bring it up. So my bad for not mentioning it. Sika had already addressed it, and we are correcting that. Going back to the percentage, instead of, because I could have taken these total numbers and backed it in exactly as the superintendent is talking about and made it a percentage. My point was calling it a percentage, and saying live within this percentage as opposed to live within this dollar amount. The one thing that she can't control is one, how much the cost of positions goes up or down, and secondly, the amount of money we bring in. So giving her a set amount of money. By the way, our employers do that. You have a salary, and that's what it's based on, is a number. Total number of dollars that are spent on overhead costs gets to the position that charities talk about of only 5% or 10% goes to overhead costs. That is something. That's the 20%. That's everything. I just thought it was easier to say to Sika, hey, here's money. I'm not saying you have to spend it this way. I just was showing you all how Dina and I, when we did the list, got to that number. Again, if you want to give her more money, we can adjust that number up. If you want to give her less money, we can adjust that number down. But chasing a percentage, I think I've never known anybody to run, like your percentage. Yes, Ms.
Just for clarification, I'm looking at the handout you've given us, and I looked at the bucket.
Yes, yeah.
And it says,
Which is bucket 2, sorry.
oh, but no.
Yeah.
Bucket 3 shows up number
Okay.
2.
139,000, that's what you all got together, and that's what you're proposing
Yes,
for the other 2 positions that the executive director, for her to do whatever she wants with.
however many positions, 1 position, 5 positions, however she wants to spend that money.
Okay.
We are approving 5 FTE exactly as they exist now, plus a $55,000 a year, plus salary and benefits. The benefit at the normal
But that doesn't
FRS.
cover the other 2 positions that she was recommending.
The
That she
other-
was requesting.
Yes,
right?
ma'am. The other 2
I'm confused.
don't come in the form of an FTE. They come in a lump sum of money
Okay,
that she can decide however she wants to spend it.
Okay.
okay. I'm sorry.
I'm sorry.
But
No, I'm trying to understand all your various buckets. The bucket you're recommending is the one that we're discussing right now that includes everything that Ms. Green asked for.
Let me start by saying there are the 3 buckets.
Mhm.
2 of them are sort of off limits for conversation because they're already approved. They're approved in the budget, and I
The one
didn't.
that we approved the last time, in addition to what we already have, plus
Right.
Holly, correct?
No. Ali is, so let me do it again. We have currently 4 full-time employees plus 1 that we approved the last time.
Okay,
That's in bucket 1.
okay, I got that.
In bucket 3, I'm going to do this in the way they appear in the agenda item. In bucket 3 are things that, again, Sika can't control, and that is legal services, because we have to have them. Accounting services, still the best deal going.
And grant, right? Okay.
He
I
is,
see
by the
that.
way.
Right.
I can't tell you what a good deal he is. Take it from a guy who does this all the time. So accounting, and the grant writing, because that was put in the budget by the council on a separate motion. again, it didn't seem fair to me to put that into Sika's contracting bucket. Know this, the buckets all go away. I was just trying to do this for simplicity. So in other words, that 50,000 for contract, if she's only spending 20, she can use 30,000 more. I just wanted to show you how I got to the number. So that when we say the final number for contracting services is 150,000 for legal, it's, but if she keeps it below that, guess what?
But that's already in the budget.
Right, so I didn't want it to count
Against
against.
her. So do we know? Can we hear from Ms. Green? Do we know if she's seen all these buckets? Is this her first time hearing this?
Right,
Do we know whether or not she's,
I know that she has seen them. When we created them on Friday, I know she saw them right after, but so
would it
before.
be appropriate?
Yeah, totally appropriate.
The 139, I'm looking at that here, but based on my little small mathematical mind, it doesn't appear to cover what she presented.
So,
And our,
no, what she presented at our meeting was. Put Holly aside, because that was sort of. Although she thought that would go away at the end of the year, so.
if we replace one
Right.
FTE, brought
Right.
another FTE.
So what I did was I created a bucket of money based on the salary requests that she asked for. So all of this money will go into one pot that she manages however she wants. But it's based on, Commissioner, the one quality assurance position that she did not get approved at the meeting. $55,000 a year. We did roll in the Holly position that would normally go away at the end of the year. I put that in there, plus an additional half of an FTE, which was, I hate to say splitting the baby, but that was, remember how both executive that Mr. Watson and you, Dr. Glenn, were like, we're kind of,
Yeah.
you know, I think you had more of a leg in yes to the third position. He had more of a leg in no to the third position. I was a no to the position. So that was like, how do I do this so that I capture the spirit that you were in, but I also capture the spirit that Mark O'Brien was in, that I was in, that Terrence was in. Again, just trying. And also capture the spirit of what the superintendent said, give her the money and let her manage it. And I want to jump to because we had not talked about
Okay,
her position on
I
this,
think it would be.
but we'll get there. But as the chair, I want to
Thank you.
recognize.
I know, it's hard. I totally understand. The only difference that I see, and I just wanted to clarify for you, Ms. Cummings, in Ms. Green's proposal, these two positions, the program and quality assurance specialist and the PR person were not contracted. They were full-time employees. And then in this position, they're as contracted employees. I think those are the difference. And I did not realize that you were proposing I thought you were dedicating or indicating that she had to use them this way.
No.
But I would like, I feel as if we're not doing what we voted on. And I just wanted clarification on what, I'm sorry, Ms. Clay, would you please read for us what we voted on at the last meeting? Because do you have access to that information?
According to what I have recorded is that the Finance and Budget Committee would set a recommended percentage or dollar amount for spending.
Okay. And see, I heard percentage, you heard nothing. I mean,
I heard both. That's what I said. We talked about both. What I brought forward was a dollar amount because it's sort of like percentage, which percentage? A percentage of just personnel services? When you, again, and this is my point is being made in your comment about 20%. They don't spend 20% in personnel services.
it's overhead,
Right.
total overhead,
But that's not what,
administrative.
but that's not what the motion didn't talk about overhead or administrative costs. It just, one moment, Commissioner. It only talked about the positions that we were going to fund, the actual personnel, positions the motion was come back with a dollar amount or a percentage amount. When Dina and I tackled it, it was, I mean, what percentage of what? Of what? Or what are we going for? Because we set a budget based on projections and it's a year out. So it's like that seemed to me to defeat what the purpose was to take a lump of money and say to the manager, we are not looking to manage, you and micromanage it. It's our job to manage it from afar. Here is a lump sum of money. Use it as you will.
I hear you, and I'm not trying to be argumentative. Honestly, I left out of that meeting, this committee meeting, where we're gonna look at percentages, figure out what's a reasonable amount, come to an agreement, make that recommendation to go back. And once the council decided on that, we were gonna tell Ms. Gray, here's your percentage, don't go over it. And however you wanna manage it, just make sure you provide the services.
Did you hear Ms.
That
Close?
was,
Yeah, okay. I just want to make sure.
I did hear.
I definitely made the comment that both were presented. What I've put forward was only on personnel services, so actual positions, because that's what the agenda item at the board meeting was, not overall budget. As we put together this coming year's budget, and you want to focus in on percentage of fixed costs as it relates to the total budget, we can definitely do that. And you want to shoot for a 20% with the, hoping that she gets to 17% or 16%. Those to me, that's what large organizations and small organizations aim for. But in terms of actual positions, people to hire to do the job, it was, hey, let's just give her the money and let's base it on the dollar amounts that she had.
Okay, so, and I do want to go to Mr. Hannah. I'm sorry.
Yeah,
But-
only because Commissioner Cummings.
No, absolutely.
I didn't have a problem. I supported the motion at the meeting primarily because it gave us the flexibility
Right.
to look at a dollar amount, but also look at a percentage of admin for Ms. Green. Now, my experience in state government and my experience in other entities is admin can be restricted. And in this instance, I was thinking admin was restricted from the personnel standpoint, and it usually ranges from 10 to 15%. I'm not familiar with the 20%,
Right.
but 10 to 15% specifically just in this particular area of personnel. Part-time, full-time, all the other ancillary positions I felt would be falling outside of that, which still gives the council a certain amount of control. When you look at personnel, the executive director works closely, has to have a hand on who's hired, whether they're full-time, part-time. She knows what she needs to make the organization work. So my perception of what we were going to do here as a board is just look at all those options, give her some flexibility. I don't want to micromanage her, and I think I said that in board meeting. I don't want us to micromanage her and her personnel. I think we as a council have a responsibility to look at the overall budget. You see what I'm saying? And not give her the overall budget and say, yeah, you work within this ambit, and the other 80% goes directly to services for our children. That's not my understanding, because I think we as a council has a certain role in other areas as well. But I was thinking specifically personnel. She knows what she needs to get the job done. We're anticipating a lot of service providers this summer, this fall, some coming on board, what they want. And she knows what she needs to manage those, to make sure those providers are providing services to the community, to the children, what have you. I think we would be derelict in our duty if we looked at overall admin costs, perhaps just 20%, and saying to her, you do this, you manage this above and beyond the personnel. Now, that's just my perception. Okay, having worked in state government, having dealt with admin positions, I'm not sure how the superintendent does it in his shop, but I think there's a certain role that he as the executive plays, and he doesn't give that responsibility to his principals,
So here's.
to his subordinates.
And I don't want to speak for the superintendent, but again, in the state, in any organization in the state, the legislature, call us the legislature at this point, makes a determination. This is how many full-time equivalents are approved. And oh, by the way, here's the total amount that goes with it. That's salaries and benefits. Plus, there is the OPS pot. That's the only role we're playing is, and they don't say it's a percentage of your overall budget, Department of Revenue. They may look at that, but here's a set amount of money and here's a set amount of positions that you have to work with. If that's not enough, please come back and tell us it's not enough and we'll make the consideration to approve another. That's all I've done here is lay that out. Let me jump to Mr. Hannah and then.
Well, I think at some point, we probably want to, I know you hear from Ms. Gray, like, even if you said 10% of would be $764,000, right? I mean, you can back into either one. In my mind, when I go to talk to people in the community, at the end of the day, I want to be able to tell them X percent goes of the money we generate goes back into programs. There's not, and 30% is salaries and benefits and contracts we have with everybody else, and only 70% goes to programs and 30%, wherever it is, because the community is going to be watching for exactly how much money is going to hire positions and salaries and benefits and contracts with stuff that has nothing to do, well, other than the support systems in place. Whatever supports we need, we need. It's like I'm a very, believe it or not, a very frugal person. My job as superintendent is to support our schools. When my managers in transportation or food service or whatever come to me with more positions, I'm very reluctant to add positions on Pensacola Street. Very reluctant. But we need to ensure we have the resources we have to support our schools. Like she needs the people to support these programs. Do we know exactly what that is? Maybe, maybe not. I honestly like this. I'm kind of shocked or surprised that we have these buckets and that you're good with this. To be honest with you, I mean, so I think it's a compromise or a balance of what she asked for with this one FTE and then other money set aside for other positions as she sees fit, and then to adjust salaries as necessary. I'm really good with it. Be honest with you, but I want to hear from Director Green.
Yeah.
Wait, hold on. Sika, I definitely want to get you, but I want to make sure that
Absolutely.
we've all asked our questions.
Absolutely.
And said so that she's got something to come back with that.
And I don't disagree with you at all. I think my major issue was I thought that when we left that meeting, we were charged by the council to come up with a percentage. And I wanted to make sure that's what we did. So when I saw this, I thought, wait a minute, that's not what we told the council we were going to do. So that was my biggest issue.
But just hold on. Before you go to the next one, do you feel like having heard what
I do.
I just said? Okay.
I do.
So
I'm comfortable with the dollar amount.
Okay. All right.
So I've gotten past that. I really have. I've gotten past the percentage.
Right.
And I'm comfortable with that. And I completely agree with Mr. Hannah. I'm not, opposing that at all. I just wanted to make sure when we go back on April, whatever date that was, they don't say, but that's not what we asked. That's not what we charged y'all to do. So I'm clean with that. And I too, I'm surprised that you have the multiple buckets in here as your example. But what I would like to ask, and I would like to ask Ms. Green, because I know that your preference from what I understood from your last budget was that you have full-time positions. And the fact that these are so I know Holly is special and we love what she does and we know where she is. but for the program and quality assurance specialist and with the PR person as contractors, would that allow you to do what you need to do to manage these programs the way we are asking for the programs to be managed? I would love to hear from you if you don't mind if I answer that.
Listen, I just want to make sure that we've all commented and
Sure.
kind of everybody knows where we are. And then, yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah, okay. You have the floor, Steve.
Well, I think in last month's meeting, just to be honest, I asked for what I thought I needed. So you all, the council landed where you all landed, and I, of course, am prepared to move forward with that. I don't think it's fair to count in a person, so $139, well, 60 of that is off the table as far as I'm concerned, because there's no way I could not have Holly and not at that amount, although I understand that you're giving $139,000 for me to go figure it out. And if that's where you land, that's where I will land. I have done research with similarly sized and similarly funded CSC. And I looked at the percentage of admin. That's what I looked at. So before I say that, let me go back, because with the positions that I requested, when I juxtapose that to our ad valorem collections, it was less than 10%. Those 5 positions or 7 positions altogether were less than 10%. And I understand where the council ended up on that. So when I looked at similarly sized CSCs, Martin County, all inclusive, their admin costs, including salaries, is 17.9%. And that's everything. And I guess that's how I originally was thinking, that there would be an administrative percentage set and that I would need to stay under as much as possible in that place with salaries being considered. St. Lucy's is at 19.71%. That's where they are. I did some calculations, so I wanted to give you all what some of our fixed costs would be in the next year. This year is a little special because like furniture and things that we'll talk about in the amended budget will not be around next year. And so I did some figuring. And so when I look at what our fixed administrative costs would be outside of salaries, it's $591,000. Now that includes $230,000 that we have to pay the tax collector, which I know Mr. Mitchell is not a fan of having to do, but we have to do that. So when I subtract that out, because I don't think we should be penalized for something we have to pay, although I know that it has to be paid, I'm getting $360,775. That is what outside of salaries next year will look like when we're operating this facility. And I included everything that we currently have in the budget, and I excluded anything that was a first-time cost, just as estimates. And so
I have a question. So Mr. Mitchell has 139,000, you have 300 something thousand. You know the difference between this?
well, that's mine. That's just to show you what our recurring expenses will be.
So in addition to the 139, what's the other? How do you get the 300?
Well, there's stuff,
There's stuff in here.
yeah, just in the
Okay.
budget, because I realized I wanted to show that number. And so, for example, awards and recognition. So I just took into consideration the things that are under operations without duplicating the things that were mentioned here in this list.
So you did what I did. What, did you factor in all of the other, like, did you factor in accounting? Did you?
Yes,
Okay, see, that's what I did
Yes.
too. And I think we're probably
But
looking at
that's-
the same.
right, I'm
Yeah.
sorry, but that's not in the 360.
Okay,
So factoring in everything we already have. So that's the 5 positions that you all have approved, our contract legal, our contract public, our contract special projects manager, our contract finance. I think the only one I didn't include was capacity building, because originally that was under programming.
Yeah.
So I did not include that one, and maybe I should, but I did not. So when you pull all that together, everything, it's $888,000. Of that, and I know Mr. Mitchell kind of feels like it's shuffling shells, but when I look at all of our other CSCs, they put any position that are dealing with the programs, whether they're programs that are run by them or programs that they are monitoring, doing quality assistance, assurance, all of that, they put that in the programming pot. They don't, when they show their budget, they do not show that because in their minds, and I agree, of course, I'll go with whatever the council wants, that it is a programming cost. So what I did was I took the cost here of the program quality assurance specialist, and I subtracted 5% because in my mind, that 5% is other duties as assigned, and just took 90%, 95% of that job. So that ends up being $90,250. I subtracted that out of the 880 because in my mind, that would be programming, which leaves $797,750. So when you add that to the 360, because I took the 230 out, you get 1.158,425. I divided that by our ad valorem, our current revenue that we took in, which is 6.9 million, and I get 16.62. So in an ideal world, if I could get 17% to deal with salaries, to deal with contracting, to deal with the operations of this organization, I think that it falls in line with what other CSCs are doing. And I think you would be fine for a while. So that's just where I sit. Again, wherever you all land, I am going to do my best and we are going to work as hard as we can.
Can I comment, please?
Yes, Dr. York.
I think you did the exact same thing that I did, because when I did my research and I was looking at those same counties, and I was just trying to calculate what is their overhead costs and what were their programmatic costs. And I realized that the overhead costs included a whole lot more than just the staff. And it did include like their legal services, their accounting services, all of their other programs. But I figured if we could calculate that percentage and say, here's the overhead. And I do believe that for some of these individuals, they are going to be almost 100% program. Like the quality person, I would expect that they are in those programs 100% of the time, except for when you'll have your planning meetings and things like that. But I would include their salaries into programs. The overhead cost goes into overheads, but I would expect Sika to manage those overhead costs and stay within that percentage. And I do think it's reasonable to say, you got to account for Mr. Grayson and you have to account for Mr. Rowe. You have to account for those things, but you can manage your staff the way you want to manage your staff. Just don't go over this certain percentage. And that was so you did it a whole lot better than I was going to be able to explain it. But that was when I walked away from my kitchen table, I walked away thinking, okay, I see what other CSCs have done. This is how they've managed it. This is how they've separated it out. And they didn't just give her $1 amount and say, you have to stick within this. She has the flexibility and it's in alignment with the other CSCs have done, which we've used as a model and a lot of the other things that we've done.
Not always, but okay. Commissioner.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. I guess I'm a little conflicted here because of what I felt our role as a committee was. And I appreciate all the hard work that you have done bringing these budgets to us, and I appreciate Ms. Green's analysis as well. And I tried to look at the numbers, but I wasn't astute enough to say part of this person's job, we can put it over here is directly programmatic, as opposed to admin. And I think perhaps that's the way we need to look at it, Mr. Mitchell. And I'm not sure if we might not need to go back to the drawing board if I know you're the chair, and maybe look at it that way, because what it boils down to in my mind is micromanaging this one. And we all clearly said we didn't want to do that. But I think we have to be practical about it. And I don't think we can departmentalize it just because it's a personnel person and say this goes directly in the admin pot as opposed to programmatic pot. Okay, and I think in our meeting, in our full meeting, some of the council members sort of expressed that, maybe not specifically, but I know but Mr. Jones and a couple other people, even the superintendent, we all said we don't want a micromanager. So I think if it's a way, Mr. Chair, that we can look at it that way, having heard Ms. Green, heard her analysis, I think it's reasonable that we look at it. And maybe we can meet again and see if we can be a little bit more flexible. With the percentages, I think we have all along looked at other services to sort of help guide us because we're new, we're treading new ground. And I don't think it's off limits for us to do that, to be fair.
So, go ahead.
Let me add, so, when I left the last meeting, I know I mentioned something about percentages, but I think I recall what Mr. Mitchell did. To me, in my mind, that ship had kind of sailed because we didn't do it from the onset. That we were going to create kind of a hybrid where she has X number of FTEs, these 5, and then there would be a number right here of 139,000 that we would agree upon that would help support other positions that she's asked for, right? So I think we're doing, in my mind, what I thought we were going to do today is that these positions have been approved by the council and that we would address the other issues with a dollar amount for her to operate. At the end of the day, we can talk about percentages. I might feel differently than you all about administration. To me is administration. And but listening to Sika, I still don't understand the difference between the 139 and the 300. What are the other $170,000? What else is in here? I mean, I see we got the HR support.
So if you turn to, I don't remember, but you'll see a page that
I see it
with the budget.
Yeah.
So what I did was I went back under, and so ad valorem fees. Well, we took that out.
Right.
Awards and recognition, added that in. Communications, that's our cell phones and, no, I didn't add that in.
So
that's already in there. Community aware engagement is in there. Equipment, licenses and fees, miscellaneous expense, it came down. Program and financial software, we do have another 150 that will go in the next year.
150,000.
That's for our SAMUS and our data program.
This is what you put in for next year's projected budget, right?
Yeah, I just
Okay.
wanted to try to give an idea of
Right.
what
So
we would be looking at for the coming.
Let me throw something out here. At the last meeting on March 23rd, there was a request for positions because there was a need for more people to do the work. The argument had been made that we were not getting the programs out onto the street fast enough because we didn't have the people to do it. That was the item, not the full budget, which, by the way, this same committee will come back. We have to put together a budget where the percentage, the overall administrative percentage, the point that the superintendent makes is like, hey, how much are you spending to spend this money? All right, that number will be part of our budget, and that when Sika's added up all these other things, perfectly legitimate to talk about. It's a finance committee. We can talk about any of them. But the purpose of today's meeting was to talk about positions that were needed. That's why, Dr. Glenn, with all due respect, I thought percentages is for just positions right now, I don't want to deal with that. Like if you want to deal with it as part of the annual budget where 20%, whether it goes into a position, is program or administrative, we can hash that all out. But that's not what we're here to do today. What we're here today to do is just to approve positions and a pot of money for the executive director to use. Again, my point was the will is, I just gave us a starting spot. I still believe that the starting spot it was probably more than I was comfortable supporting, but I tried my best to listen to what all 10 council members said. And again, for purposes so that you understood how we got to that number, I broke it down by position. Number one, it is in positions. Number two, everything is in pot. Pot 2 and 3 are technically the same pot. So if accounting services are actually set, legal services, I gotta tell you, I like Mr. Rowe a lot. We've probably used those because of the starting point, probably more than we'll need. I think those will come down. I don't think Holly's will come down. That will stay in. So there's the 50,000 that could go to grant writing. We haven't spent any of that. That is giving the executive director the flexibility. That's why the pot of money approach, based on percentage, but actually based on dollars that you can spend.
Mr. Mitchell,
That's it. Yes, ma'am.
can I, just for clarification? Well, bucket 3, I guess,
Yes, ma'am.
bucket 3. Now, at our last meeting, we approved one program specialist position.
Yes.
Right. Our executive director asked for one program specialist position, and then she really feels that we need that community relations position, right? So it's 2 in the wing that we're charged with coming back to discuss. And this is what you're proposing, right?
Right.
Okay. Now, her proposal for the community relations specialist was the 55, and that's when you said you cut it in half and let her. You recommended the 24,
It was.
somewhere thereabouts.
Right.
Correct.
And the reason I came up with 24 was it was just a set amount per month. And it
A contract.
the Holly position goes away. We kept the Holly position. So I rolled that in. So technically it's 84,000, not 60, and I mean, not just 24,000. That's where I came up with that number. Again, based on me asking the question, what would be the second position you would fund?
So if we had funded the full community relations specialist position, the notion is Holly, 50,000, 60,000 would go away.
Right.
Okay. But she wants to stay on now, so you based
But
it
she
on
always wanted to stay on.
Oh, I didn't know.
My
Okay.
only question was, well, I don't know that. My only question was, are we creating this position because she wants to be in a full-time
Right.
position, which is a perfectly legitimate thing to,
Okay.
And the answer was, no, she likes being on contract, so she can have other clients. I think that's fantastic as a guy who has multiple
So
clients.
this is based on keeping Holly,
Yes,
bucket
ma'am.
number 3, correct?
So I apologize.
Yeah, that's okay.
Because I got us off when I started looking at everything else. You're right. We're here to talk about this issue. I agree wholeheartedly. Okay. Sika, when you came to us before, you were asking for 2 quality control people, right? And a public relations person. We gave her 1 quality assurance person. You kept Holly. You basically kept this position too, right? And you gave her a community outreach.
Yeah.
So I know, but Holly was gonna go away.
We
So-
were gonna transition her little by little.
Right,
Transition
but
her.
come on, but I said, you asked for 2 quality control people and a public relations person.
I did.
Financially, basically, she got maybe more than she asked for financially, because she received in this plan $60,000 for Holly's position that's gonna go away. and $55,000 for the other quality assurance person, and 24,000 for a part-time community outreach program.
And we'll hold on, and so yes, and the flexibility that if we spend less in legal and don't spend the grant writing, that money too is hers to manage.
Right.
We're not
So
micromanaging. I apologize. I broke it down so that you would
Right.
see
Right.
I see.
her in pot three, she has nothing to, I mean, she didn't ask for a lawyer. We hired the lawyer. She didn't ask for an accountant. We hired the accountant.
Can I just?
Yeah, yes, so we're there. Wait,
Stika, do you care about this, or you care about, like, we don't want these positions to be full-time? Or could Sika potentially say, I want to take this money right here and roll it into
She can
these
do whatever
two,
she wants to do with
Right,
that.
right, and
139.
roll it into these two positions? I could take that 60 and come up with this. Now I have the three I asked for. One,
Yes, sir.
2, 3. Correct.
Yes, sir.
And we're saving money here and here and here.
But where is
All
it,
right.
where, Ms. Mitchell, I'm sorry.
Yes, sir, no, you're fine.
Okay, so where does the executive director know that she's got the flexibility to roll in funds from the accountant, from the attorney, from grant writing?
We're taking all we're doing, the 3 buckets will become 2 buckets.
Oh.
One will be, I just broke this, like,
Okay.
I think, maybe I shouldn't have, but I really didn't want to kind of throw that on. I was being overly fair. Maybe I should be a little more devious. I recognize that not everybody sees the world the way I do, and so I'm trying to help you understand the way I see the world. We have 5 FTE. In my proposal, we have 5 FTE. An FTE is a salary and benefits and all the taxes that go with it. Then we have contracted services. Contracted away. And right now, the board has approved 150,000 in legal services. Mr. Grayson, who's probably sitting here going, I'm not asking for it, but his is a set amount. We have 50,000 in a contract writing person. We have, in addition, the 3 positions that I've mentioned here. One, a program. I should put on my glasses before I start talking, but a program and quality assurance specialist at a contracted rate of 55.
So, Ms. Bishop, so if we accept what you have proposed, bucket 3 and 2, 2 and 3.
Are the same, and she has full
Okay,
flexibility.
3 and 2, how will you present it? How will it
Well, I'm never
be
gonna
presented?
I never.
But if we vote on this, how will it be presented to the full council with the understanding that she has the flexibility to deal with the allocations for grant writing, accounting, and legal, if it's not totally expended?
Okay, so here's here's the recommendation I would make. Yeah, and I wanted you to see the bucket so that it wasn't like muddying it all up, but now to muddy it all up. There are, now it's gonna look like a state agency. There are 5 FTE approved with salary and benefit dollars that go with that.
Okay.
That has already been approved and it's in the budget. There will be an additional budget for contracted services or other personnel services and contracted services. Those dollar amounts will be at the full discretion of the executive director and will include those things that we've asked for. Now, look,
Those hours would be what?
Those would be
39,000
legal.
294 total,
plus
the legal, accounting, grant writing, and these contracted services.
Yes, ma'am.
It comes to 294,
no, what?
$294,000. When I added the 139 and the 150,
Okay, I see the 139
here's the 150.
and I see the 155, but it's just not put together, but we
Yes.
would put it together.
we would put it together
Okay.
as contracted services.
Okay,
that are under the discretion of.
The executive director.
But let me just kind of make this point. Again, I don't have a dog in this particular fight, but council members, anyone to suggest that we as a council don't have a responsibility to ultimately it falls to the executive director. But for example, Ms. McFadden, grant writing is important to her. So I have no doubt that she'll be in Sika's ear. Like, I really want this. I really want this. Again, Sika gets to make that decision on how she manages it. There may be, people like me who say, by the way, the auditor, again, falls outside. This is kind of like the tax collector. It is part of our expense. And Sika's right. It frustrates the heck out of me, but government costs money. So Commissioner Cummings, that is my point. The other reason that I wanted it, the second bucket, was I thought my compromise it was more than I was prepared to vote on. But I thought, you know what? I heard what everybody said. And there were people, for the first time, I was pleased to be joined on the other side, right? But by what I think are very reasonable people, whether we agree or disagree. And so I came up with a number, again, only on personnel services that we can adjust up. If you want to give her a little more money, if you don't think that's enough money, we can adjust up. That we as a committee will come back to the full board and say, here's what that number is. And yes, the percentage it will come.
Yeah.
I promise you it's coming. But the percentage will be based on a full administrative cost.
Okay. I'm not married to a percentage.
I know you're-
Yeah, so I just want to clarify that. Thank you for acknowledging that, yeah. And it was very helpful for me to hear that motion again, because that was resonating in my mind leaving that meeting. I think we're all violently agreeing with each other. Honestly, I think we're all saying the same thing. What I just want to make sure if what I'm thinking our proposal is that we have acknowledged that she's going to get her 5 FTEs as they were, and we are approving our dollar amount that we plan to take back to the council is $294,000, which must include legal, accounting, and the grant writing. And then the rest, you have the discretionary funds to do whatever she wants to do with it. That's what I think where we've landed. What I'm still not clear on is, does that adequately meet the needs of what she needs? And I guess you haven't quite answered that question.
Well, Mr. Chair, if I may, in my opinion, really what I have is the 55 and the 24, because all the rest of this is already set in budget.
Right.
So I can't move that. So that would be the first thing. And if that's what you approve, then that's what I'll work with.
So you're only getting 79.
Right, it's because the rest of it is done. Secondly, I think is more of a question. So if you approve this, will I have to come back to the budget committee every time I need to move money or I need to move contracted money? And if I have to do that, so every month we
Same conversation over and over again.
having the same conversation.
No,
I just need to
that is exactly my point of only having it in 2 buckets. You have contracted and other personnel services, exactly like a state agency. You don't have to come back to the legislature and say, yeah, but can I move this 10,000 and from here to there? That's yours.
We're saying.
But if she needs more contract, then
And if she starts to hit it, by the way, like I mentioned in my opening, for example, the person she hired as the second quality person, right? The contracted one, it's just killing it. And like we've seen that not only do we need it, we might even need more. There's nothing that stops the executive director from coming if she wants to move something to a full-time equivalent. It's going to cost more money because of benefits and that go with it. But then that's the only reason she would have to come back is if she needs more money, she can come back at any meeting to do that. Or if she wants to move a position that's contracted to a full-time equivalent.
So I have a question about that. So Sika right now, although you this proposal is for 139. Could Sika say, you know what? I don't want this, and I want to make these two people full-time and live within this amount.
She can do whatever she
Yeah.
wants to do with the one
You're
thing.
You got the flexibility to,
Okay with that?
right?
Okay. So in my mind then, because I was again, the understanding that we asked for this position, the 2 quality assurance people and a public relations, and that Holly was going away. So in my mind, she's getting, again, more than she asked for, because now she can hire 2 quality assurance people and a public relations person, and Holly goes away potentially. She wanted to.
Yes.
Oh,
Okay, all right.
but you can keep Holly if you want.
No.
And you can hire somebody.
She could. I'm just saying the original ask was for those 2 people, the public relations person, and then Holly was going away. Is that's where we started, is that right?
She was going to phase out.
Face away.
I
Okay.
think
You're
that's
not gonna have
important.
Kelly,
We're
right?
gonna hire and then-
Right.
so that-
Yeah,
so I
yeah,
wanna be
but
sure.
Yeah, but I'm just saying in my mind, financially, you had the full-time position they approved, again, plus Holly, plus money for another quality assurance person, plus 50% of a public relations person. But you could hire 2 full-time people out of there with, or for 139 grand.
And by the way, at any point along the way, again, Dr. Glenn, remember in our executive committee, I said to you, none of us know right now how many exactly we need. I would rather dial it up as we need it than dial it back.
I understand.
And that was, so my approach was to try to meet sort of the will of what I heard from 10 people, 9 people. And what I was thinking myself, but I kind of put myself aside, to be honest with you, and try to listen to the other 9 board members in my approach. The nice thing about the flexibility that we have is we have set aside a 5% fund every single year. Again, if we spend all the money on the program and it's rocking along and everything is rocking along, and we spent all this money on the quality assurance people, and it's like, you know what? Candidly, we probably don't need another full-time quality assurance person, but here's what I've done. I've taken that 55,000, that we were paying Joe, and Joe now needs to be, a full-time equivalent if we're going to keep him. And that's going to cost us, a set amount, depending on the retirement it is. And again, to Sika's credit, it was more a mistake on my part. We just ran the numbers very quickly. But that's going to cost money. And I'd like to have a half-time equivalent on contracted services. So I need to up that budget. There's nothing that stops her from coming back to the budget committee, the next budget committee, unlike the state process where you have to come back to the legislature.
And I completely agree. I
We need every
hear
month.
what you're right. I understand that. The only thing that I'm concerned with is and the reason why I keep on going back to asking Sika, because it is gonna be an administrative work. I mean, she will have to come back. We're gonna have more of these conversations. And I know you prefer to dial it back than to dial it. I just wanna make sure, I wanna make sure we're not dialing too far back or too far forward. And so I want to get a good sense of where we are right now, because given everything in the press and the fact that there's a lot of attention on us, what I don't want, Mr. Mitchell, is for us to roll out all these programs, which I'm expecting a lot of programs to roll out in the next couple of months, and then it's not managed appropriately. And then people saying, well, doggone, y'all rolled out these programs and weren't even ready for them. You cannot give us any information. I prefer to be prepared. And that's how I think, that's how I parent too. But my daughter today called me to ask me for $70. She just wanted $70. I gave her 80. And I said, make it work, don't come back to me. Make it work. I gave her a little bit more because it's like, I'm giving you more than what you asked for, but you better make it work. I prefer for that than for her to give her the $70 and she comes back and says, well, gosh, Mom, I really needed 75. Now it's me stopping work again and logging back on to, Wells Fargo. So my point is, I want to make sure she has what she needs. And I'm not trying to be an overspender. I just want to make sure we give her what she needs to do the job. And let's be reasonable about it and not be so tight that we have issues down the line. And that's all I'm thinking about. I'm thinking about, we roll these all out in August. We start the programs, the programs roll out, and then we don't have information or they're not managed. And then we're looking at Ms. Green and she's like, well, I just don't have the staff to be able to do it. Then I'm upset, I'm upset because we wanted to make sure these were managed tight and right. That's my term. And I prefer to give her what she needs to make sure we have that, than for us to have that situation. And then we say, okay, well, she came back. Now we need to add, but we've already messed up a little bit and we have bad press as a result of it. That's what I'm thinking. And that's why I keep on looking at Ms. Gray and saying, is this going to work to give you what you need to manage the programs appropriately? So I just want to put that out there.
Yes.
What I understand now, looking at the two buckets together, okay, for this budget year, I believe we come back again in October, right?
But for the budget, we will actually
start working on it.
Yes, yes.
But for approval of the budget, we come back in October.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, but from what I understand now, based on looking at the budget, the buckets, looking at what Ms. Green asked for, I feel that we are giving her what she asked for. Now, is that your understanding, Ms. Green? Can I ask her that?
Yeah.
The 139 plus 155, she doesn't have to come back to the council to ask for any flexibility as far as the 155 is there for her. 155, 130.
She's only getting 139.
Hmm?
She's only getting
She's
139.
getting 139, but the money in the contracted services is flexible for her use.
And we have
If
not
she needs
spent
to, if she needs to.
$50,000. And I look, this
So
is
that's 189.
right. That's
Those are set.
the
I know,
50,000
but
is
it's
not
not
set.
expended.
Okay,
The
well,
50,000 isn't set and the 150 isn't set. That's based on an hourly rate. That's not set at 150,000.
what 150 is not
But
set.
if she
For
needs
the
it,
legal
she
services.
can use it, right?
I only have 75 for.
Yeah, 75.
No, you have 75 that you've.
In the budget, we're budgeted up to 70.
75.
Oh, right, we're at 30.
30
right now,
county.
30.
50 for grant, right?
51%. So I have 75 for legal,
Right, in 5
30
months.
for accounting,
And 50 for grant writing.
and 50 for grant writing. My question is, since this is a line item budget and each one has a cost. So if what you're saying is I have $294,000 in contract. Because it is set in a line item, do I have to come back every month when I want to move money from one of those line items?
No.
That is my question.
No, it's,
If that's not the case, then of course I'll make it work. What I'm saying for this year though, the
You know-
money is already set. If I could just finish. The money is already set in the line. So as of this meeting, once the council approves this 294, I can switch it around. I can work with John, switch it around so that all the contracted services are here. And I do not have to come back if I need to move money between those line items. That's all I'm asking. And if that's the case, then I will make it work.
And it's my understanding that's a flexibility that we are giving you.
that is correct.
That's the flexibility that we are recommending to the full council to give you.
So is that a true statement? I just wanted, is that true that,
That is exactly what
okay,
this does.
so she gets 294. And with the 294, she's got to cover legal services, accounting services, grant writing services, and whatever staff she wants without coming back for approvals.
Correct.
That's it. Okay.
May I ask a question, Ms. Smith?
Yes, Commissioner.
We spent, and I know startup, legal and everything is probably a little bit more, but do we know what we spent the first year for the contracted services, Madam Executive Director? I know we did see the budget.
I don't have it here. Legal did go up
Yes,
for
we
a
did.
little bit
But
because.
not the budget.
And that was startup, yeah.
Again, we have this kind of unusual budget because we as a council can move money exactly at will. There is no set amount. The only requirement is if we're going to move money, that we as a council vote, the majority votes in favor of it. So again, this is, going back to my point, and seeking my frustration with you was not that you were saying, I'll work with it. Yeah, we'll all work, we'll all work within the confines that are given to us. But Dr. Glenn, your question is a good question. And my recommendation was to give the executive director the full flexibility of following our instructions of here's the pot of money, use it how you will. And I apologize that I broke it down into two pots or three pots. One, I just wanted you to see the additional amount of money that we were adding to it and the rationale that I used. And the rationale that I used was based on Ms. Green's request, coupled with her comments about the community outreach or whatever the new position is going to be and the Holly position is considered. That was the only reason I put it in a separate
I
bucket.
understand that. So can we make a proposal? Let us get to recommend to the council that the dollar amount that we came up with is $294,000 for contracting services for Ms. Green. And it is to include the staff that she needs to do the job, but it has to include legal services, accounting services, and grant writing services.
You make whatever motion you want to
Sure.
get a second. I would just say we are required to have legal services and accounting services. I don't think, and this goes back to not trying to micromanage her, I wouldn't put the grant writing because, oh, by the way, we have $50,000 in our budget. By the way, we haven't spent $1 and we're almost halfway through. I mean, technically, we are halfway through at this point.
Right.
So I don't want, that's why I was like, just leave it in the bucket
Right.
and let her spend it how she wants.
Give it a flexibility.
I don't think that any person who knows me would have said, this is his recommendation, when I think of this could be the shortest meeting I've ever sat here. And it wasn't.
No, it's always works that way. I know. So I hear your recommendation, but I just want to make sure that as a part of that recommendation with the 294, she does have the flexibility to move money around within those buckets to cover what she needs.
Without ever coming back.
Without coming back to the budget
Right.
committee. Okay.
Knowing, by the way, it's like everything she does, the council will evaluate her performance, and that was the
Absolutely.
idea.
I agree.
The what she does with it, we'll be able to grade it at the end, but complete and total flexibility without having to move it from one.
So go ahead, Ms. Cooke.
No, well, Mr. Chair, I'm pretty sure all of these questions are going to come up at our council meeting.
Yeah, me
We
too.
might well hash it out now.
Including the categories for contractual services as well.
Right.
Okay.
So what the good thing about it going this long is that I know sort of what to anticipate, and I know round two, how to present it in two buckets
Yeah.
as opposed to one. I just wanted them to understand what is listed as bucket two here, but really in my mind, bucket three were the new.
Sure.
And again, based on the original request made by Ms. Green.
Okay.
But I'm going to present it. Dina and I will work on this. It will reflect one senior manager, the rest at the standard rate, and for retirement purposes. And it will reflect one bucket that
Yes.
includes all contracted services. And based on, I think the motion that you're about to make, Dr. Glenn, will say the requirement is legal services and accounting services have to be funded through this pot of money.
Okay, so I'm gonna read words, I'm sorry.
No, I just want to say, and so the bottom common denominator is contractual services.
Yes.
Right.
Which would include personnel.
Yes.
So I want to make a motion. The motion is that we are recommending to the council that she still has her 5 approved FTEs and that we're allocating $294,000 for contract services for her to use at her discretion. But in that contract services, it must include legal and accounting services. And then the rest is her discretion as to how she wants to allocate her staff
Without ever having to come back.
without ever having, coming back.
I have a motion. Dr. Glenn, thank you.
Mr. Chair.
Let me get a second and then we'll open up for discussion. Do I have a second?
Yeah, I'll say.
You have a motion and a second. Discussion is great.
As the council's already approved the full-time position, you don't.
We don't have to include that. You
Yeah.
can exclude that. All right, thank you.
Okay, so we need to amend it. Do we need to amend it?
Let's just, I think that's what we're recommending
Yeah.
to them anyway, so it's, yeah.
Yeah, thank you.
I have a question.
Sure.
If she decides in her bucket number 2, not to contract, to hire another person, they move into bucket 1, but then that 290 is reduced by the amount,
Correct.
including their salary, benefits, and every
Yes.
penny
That's
comes out of that bucket.
It comes out of the contracting budget.
Correct.
Correct. So she can move them up to an
You
FTE,
can move them up to
but
bucket
everything
1.
comes out of the contracting budget.
Right.
And she could come back at any
She's got that
point
flexibility.
to come back and say, thank you very much for the 2 hours you put in on April 3rd. It's not enough.
I will say to Mr. Mitchell's point, it's easier to bring people into an organization as opposed to letting them.
Okay.
So
And I actually said that to Dr. Glenn the last time. I'm like, I don't want to let somebody go.
it's not,
Yeah.
it's
I
not.
did, I totally get it.
So we have a motion and a second.
Okay, does she need to amend it so the minutes will be clear or what?
I will amend it to remove the 5 FTEs that were already approved at the previous board meeting.
Okay, and I'll accept that amendment as a second.
So I have a motion and a second without objection. Well, you know what? Ms. Clay, could you take the roll call vote for me?
Ask for public comment first.
You know, I have not gotten public comment. And and you know, we do have a 3-minute limit that I voted against, so which is why I let somebody go above. But do we have public comment?
We do not have.
I just said I- Species, sir. Do you want to speak?
I just want to say congratulations.
Thank you. Okay, could we take the vote?
Commissioner Cummings?
Yes.
Dr. Glenn?
Yes.
Mr. Hannah?
Yes.
Mr. Mitchell?
Yes. We have a recommendation to bring to the board at our next board meeting on April 20th. Very nice. Okay, the next meeting date of this,
Wait, we have a whole other agenda.
oh dear.
Well,
We
if-
do,
Mr. Chair, if I may,
yes,
may I ask that we move this to next meeting because I'd like to be able to realign, given what you all have just passed.
you know what, so the only thing is, and I want to throw it out there for you all to know, and yes is the answer, we can move 6. This includes the moving the furniture, am I right?
It does.
Okay, I just want to let the rest of the committee know this. Each time you look, and I don't know the calls you guys have gotten, I can speak only to the calls I've gotten. There have been several people who have commented on furniture. It looks like we're way over our budget. It's because we budgeted it for last fiscal year, And we didn't buy it in last fiscal year. So all we're doing is rolling forward the money and we are going to adjust the budget so that when someone looks at it, again, it doesn't look like we're, government employees gone wild. So that is going to be, and it will be, I guess, at the next committee meeting. But I just want you to know ahead of time, that was,
Like the senior retirement, like the senior retirement benefit, senior management retirement benefit.
like that. Yeah.
So, Mr. Chair, so was Ms. Green's request that this not be brought up at our meeting this month?
No.
Is that- I couldn't hear you.
No, I'm requesting that number 6, we were gonna go through the adjusted budget.
Oh, I see.
That we wait until the May meeting,
Oh.
because that will allow me to move all contracted service. It's just gonna allow me to realign so that it makes more sense.
Sure.
And I'm doing that anticipating that the council will be okay with that.
Well, and regardless of how it's a really great idea because regardless, God bless you, we're gonna have to adjust accordingly. So in this case, we'll only have to do once. So thank you. Yeah. So can I get well, you know what, do I even need a motion to move 6? No.
No,
No,
Okay, we're just gonna move 6 to the next budget committee meeting, which brings me to the next budget committee meeting. Ms. Clay, what is the next budget committee?
Monday, May 1st.
Look at that,
May
right
1.
there on
May
May Day. I might I'm gonna say it's gonna be a really long meeting and it will be our shortest meeting. We have on the agenda, item number 6. We will also begin to put together, Ms. Snyder and I will begin to put together a budget because while it goes into effect in October, we really do need to move this along so that we give the council enough time to consider the budget. And then we can, because we're gonna have to back into a millage rate percentage. So that will be a good time to hear from Mr. Steen again. And that will be the time to bring your nickels, because it was a very impressive display the first time you did it.
I'm just gonna haul around like that Diogenes with the lantern. Look.
Yes, yes.
Mr. Chair, one more thing.
Yes, ma'am.
The schedule for trim will be in the council packet for everyone to review. Now that we have set meetings, it's not going to be nearly as hard as last year. So it will be in that packet.
So remind me from a timing perspective, let's go backwards. The final date, the second public hearing that we have to hold that is so terribly well attended is when?
It must be before September 30th.
So, and it can't conflict with school board?
First meeting cannot be for school board or Young County.
Sets theirs.
And so I
Okay,
backed that into the schedule
okay.
that you will see, and I can actually send it to you.
So are both of them in September then?
Yes.
Okay, so now let's go to, that means that we as a board have to have voted on a recommendation that goes into the trim notice. And when is that due to the tax collector? Okay.
Actual schedule. Okay, so. All right, so right now, our step 1, the budget discussion and preparation will be Monday, June 5th at the Finance Budget Committee meeting. So we'll start in May. You'll have the final draft that will come to this committee to send to the council. Okay, then step 2, we'll do the trim and budget discussion by the council at the June 15th meeting.
June 15th, okay.
June 14th.
And when do we,
14th.
right?
Our first hearing will be the first week of September, so it's the week of September 11th.
When, okay, wait, but between our June meeting and September, we're required to let the tax collector know.
We don't have to give them anything.
Oh, no,
That was just our starter.
Wait,
We had to
no,
do that,
no,
right?
wait, no, we do, what, and let me. They give us, when did they give us their,
Preliminary evaluation.
right,
June
what their
1st.
projected is, okay, June first.
Preliminary is June first, final is July.
It's July.
So that's something we have to do, they do that.
Yeah, they
Right.
tell
They
us,
tell us.
and we can then calculate accordingly if we do, you know. 0.1, 0.375, 0.5, can't go over 0.5, so stop there, but I'm thinking, when do trim notices go out? Because there's public comment in September, but the trim notice has already gone out. Because that's what the public's commenting on. So we have to tell, don't we? We have to tell them,
So July,
right, okay, Joe, right,
so the draft budget review, the meeting schedule and the timeline and all of that goes after July first.
okay,
So they give us that final valuation
right,
and we give them I think it's called a
our proposed millage.
Yeah.
Yes,
proposed millage rate,
okay,
and all that's done electronic.
okay, good enough, so that is in July,
That's in July.
that's the.
Right now, we're scheduled not to have a meeting in August, which we will be fine. And then in September is when we have our hearing. So the first one will be the week of September 11th. I think the school board is the 7th, because
Okay, but so that everybody knows, those meetings in September are for people to comment on what our number was.
Correct.
So that's why we have to let them know in July what our, yes,
So the tax collector will send that out to each, the tax collector will send both of our meeting dates out in July. So our first one will be the week of September 11th, and that's where we'll do the draft resolution for the tentative millage and the resolution for the tentative budget. And then Thursday, September 21st, immediately after our council meeting, approximately 6 o'clock, we will hold a second hearing and do the final millage and final budget.
okay, you want the same thing. Again, I want to remind you guys, that's the easy part. The September stuff is the easy part.
Right.
It's the July part that we are required to give them the number so that they can send that out to people. That's what the truth in millage is all about. So, yeah, so it's really in July
So do
that we need to
Mr.
advise them.
Chair, give a recommendation to the council?
Yes, oh,
Okay.
yes, in this,
Okay.
yeah,
That's awesome.
yeah. So we have,
First discussion will be at your next month's.
yeah, we've got miles to go before we sleep.
So next, so for the May 1st meeting, we're doing the adjusted budget and the military.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah, the discussion, right.
5 o'clock.
Okay,
That's start, we'll have
Yeah.
evaluations like we did last year
okay.
of the various millage rates, and you guys can have it.
Thank you. So you should move the legislative session. Oh, good. It'll be different next year. Okay. You know, we have an agenda for next May Day. We have time for committee member comments.
Thank you for putting everything, not really for your budgets and organizing this, and I'll say this to the entire committee, you were probably more generous than I would have been at the end of the day.
Let the record show that I'm not as more conservative fiscally than I am. We always end up here. It's funny how that happens.
No, really, I mean, I think as an executive, I think she got what she asked for, maybe a little bit more at the end of the day, if she decides to use it that way. So I think it's more than just make it work.
Well, when I said make it work, if I may, Mr. Chair, when I said make it work, I was thinking about just that $70,000. I was thinking that everything that was already in the line items would have to stay there. And I was also thinking that in order to move them, I would have to come back every month.
Yeah.
So where we landed, absolutely.
Couldn't be happier.
Where we landed, I absolutely am okay with.
Awesome.
Let the record show that she couldn't be happier.
no, let the record show that Ms. Green is.
And I was just getting 75. I'm like,
I'll make it
I'll
work.
Make it work.
Oh, yes.
You don't,
I'm moving.
I'm ready to go.
One more comment.
One quick comment. No, I do want to thank this committee because it was a hard conversation. But we came to a conclusion and this requires a lot of respect and just listening to what each other has to say. And we did that and I appreciate that. I value that. And so I just wanted to say thank you to everybody because people come in with certain demeanors or, perspectives, but at the end of the day, let's just kind of talk it through and then come to a conclusion. So I value that. So thank you for leading us through that conversation.
Yes,
Yeah, that was.
yes. As the community member, I was happy to do it to my fellow community member. Anyhow, and hearing a motion for